When I first started this, I was very cognizant of not wanting to attach the highs of the performance and the connection of being on stage and dancing with others with drugs and alcohol. Because once those get connected, it's very dangerous. Like with the intense high that I feel after an incredible show where I've connected with hundreds of people that have wanted to maybe take pictures with me or, whatever. Like, will that high be magnified times 10 if I'm fucking rolling? Probably. But how dangerous does that sound?
Welcome to Psych Drop, the psychology of success in electronic dance music. I'm Dr. Sunni psychologist, executive coach, consultant, and host of Psych Drop, where we go beyond the music to explore the mind's inner habits and stories of the people shaping electronic dance music culture. Today's guest, who I'm so excited about, took a very unique path from working in politics as one of the youngest elected officials in the United States to becoming a rising international electronic dance music artist. Along the way, he's amassed over 13 million streams across platforms with placements on editorial Spotify playlists like Hard Techno, New Music Friday, and he has a fiercely loyal audience of more than 130,000 followers across social platforms. This past year, his remix of Rosalia's Berghain became the most downloaded techno remix in the world. That's huge, with hundreds of thousands of fan creations on social media. In 2025, another exciting moment, he made his European festival debut at Nameless Festival in Italy, sharing the stage with artists like Martin Garrix, Armin van Buuren, and the Chainsmokers. Please welcome Conrad Taylor.
Hello! Thanks so much for having me.
That was a mouthful. I'm so excited you're here.
It's my honor, and yeah, that was a mouthful. But thanks for gassing me up. I appreciate that.
Of course. I mean, and that's just a few of the things, right? Like I kind of tried to pick out some highlights there, but you have been doing so much. You have so much to come, and I want to get to all of it. But first, I really want to start by talking about how you went from a completely different career in politics to moving into music and just doing this full time.
It's a good question. My journey into music is definitely unorthodox. Music for me was always the way that I expressed my feelings and emotions. And in doing so, it was very much a private thing. Growing up, I was a classically trained pianist, and then, stopped for a few years, but then late into high school really got back into it. But it was just me and my keyboard writing songs and feeling my feelings, in a society where men don't really get the opportunity to do that in a healthy way. But at the same time, it was really, politics and government that had my heart. Public service was where I saw my life going. When I was 18 years old, I ran for city council and won and became, at the time, the youngest elected official in New York State. And I really thought that was going to be my life. I have this vivid memory coming home from a city council meeting, a really intense one, and then putting on, I think it might have been an Avicii Tomorrowland set, and having this thought that was oh man, in this lifetime I'll never be able to be a DJ and do that, because it was always something that a part of me wanted to do, but I was just that's just not the life that I've chosen. That's an alternate reality where Conrad gets to do that. Years later now, I am, playing big stages and am a DJ. So that in itself is really a lesson to me. But how I made that transition was just after, years of working in politics. I'm 29 now, and worked in politics really since I was a teenager, 16, 17, all the way until I was 25. I felt like I had this whole career already. I felt a little bit burnt out. And in that time, I started producing music, really connecting with my love for electronic music, especially. I am German, so like that Berlin techno scene is something that I've always been exposed to. It's always been in my blood a little bit. And after releasing my first song, getting my first few gigs as a DJ, it kind of just like, it was like, okay, it's scary to start at the bottom in something again, but I just couldn't let it go. And I kept going and going, and I just haven't stopped. It feels only right to connect with people in this way. And I'm so happy that I trusted myself to kind of start again in a new thing and just go for it.
Wow, amazing. I mean, there's so much there I want to get into. And I'm like wondering, like, toward the end of what you just said there, like, was there like a specific moment where like you knew that this is what you had to do?
It was definitely, I can't remember a specific moment, but it was definitely like, in one of the gigs that I had as a DJ here in New York in my like first, maybe 6 months of doing it or so. I can't remember if it was a specific moment or just accumulation, because I quickly realized that like music and the performance of it as well was filling a hole that had not been really filled in a long time. It like I was never really raised religious and not a religious person, but like music was this way that I could access like my spirituality, for example, in a way that I had never done so before. And now, DJing has become a very spiritual experience for me. At my biggest shows where you might see me on stage, like really like, losing my marbles, what I'm experiencing is like a spiritual catharsis. Like I'm trying to access like another realm of like what maybe exists in the world and trying to channel that energy through myself into the audience. I was noticing that even in like the smallest little bars in New York that I like was like able to access that a little bit and maybe even like inspire one person to like access that on the dance floor themselves. I couldn't let go of that like spiritual connection that I had made. And then like I was like, well, okay, let me explore that more. And really like once I started exploring it, there was no like letting it go.
You sort of knew like this was what you wanted to be doing and needed to be doing.
Absolutely. And that manifests itself in different ways too. I have those same experiences, alone in the studio or here in my bedroom if I'm, making something. And I mean every music producer experiences this to a certain extent when they're making music. Like when you finally enter flow state on a song and it's finally connecting and you like, that's very, very special. Very, very special feeling. That's like, a laid back Luke, who is an incredible legendary producer and kind of acts as a mentor for a lot of DJs, said this in an interview recently that was like the music can, once it's done or once it's out in the world, like, you know, who knows what's going to happen. Maybe it'll blow up, maybe it'll bomb, whatever it is. But that moment in the studio when you're in flow state, when like you listen to that song back and you're like, damn, this is fucking good. Like that moment is yours. And I love when he said that because it just was like, I have experienced that and it's the best freaking feeling in the world. And to me, like it is another moment where you can use your music to become, to connect spiritually. And like, yeah, so yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah.
it sounds like, you're really doing like having this spiritual connection like with the music. Sometimes it may be in the studio, sometimes it's DJing, but there's such a connection for like the why and what music does for you.
Absolutely. And I really want to give that to others. I really like my shows are all about that. It's like, okay, great. We're here to dance. I love that. I just want people to dance more. But that is the basis of it. Like more than dance, what can we let go? from our hearts and from our souls? What can we grow? What community can we build together? What like the dance like nobody's watching, but like everybody's there, but like how can you express yourself in a way that you maybe have never done before in your life? Music has been such a tool for me to grow as a human being, and I just want to give that to as many people as possible that maybe stumble into a Conrad Taylor show or come there with that intention in mind.
Right. Well, I love that concept. And I think, you really bring that home in your performance, right? Like, I think that's sort of why people keep coming back. You definitely get them to dance, you keep them dancing, right? And you really, I think, create an experience. It's almost like what music does for you, you bring to others.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how I would put it, and that's what I strive for.
So yeah, so let's talk a little bit more because anyone who's watching this right now, if you haven't attended a Conrad Taylor show, it's really something you need to do because I don't think it could be completely put into words what the experience truly is. Me myself having experienced it many times, and it is very unique. So like I'd want to get into that more. I definitely want to come back to something you said earlier about like the music and being a way to express emotions early on, and how, maybe boys are not, or they're definitely not taught to do that in the same way. And I want to come back to that. So remind me in case I forget. But first, I want to really dive into more of like about your performance because again, it is very unique and something people really need to experience in person for themselves.
And I did just yesterday announce my winter tour. If you're watching this and do want to experience a Conrad Taylor show and join me in building this community, you can visit my website, conradtaylormusic.com, or my Instagram, conrad.taylor, to learn more if I'm coming to your city, which I just may be. So, yeah, yes.
Yes, you'll see me at some of them. So hope to see you
Yes,
all
you
there.
will. That would be awesome. But yeah, like my performance, where does people often ask me like where does the energy come from? And sometimes there's like an intonation of like who's your cocaine dealer or something. And I like and I've literally never done that drug. Um but more importantly, I'm always sober when I play. Like, well, 99% of the time. Maybe I'll have had a shot before a couple of times, but really, like 99% of the time, I'm completely sober when I play, and that's actually like I think drugs would probably get in the way of that because again, like this um, experience of DJing is so spiritual for me that I think it requires my raw self available to access that plane of existence where I can maybe draw that additional energy or that additional oomph. The philosophy that I have is you are a conductor, and that word has two meanings for me here. One, a conductor, like in the classical music sense, where you are like orchestrating the night and you're telling the story, and you are conducting the music and the crowd to and their energy to ebb and flow, but you're also a conductor in the sense of like an electrical conductor. So, the energy that maybe comes from the music or from wherever it may come, it conducts through you like an electric current into the crowd. And, a lot of people have the experience when they come to a Conrad Taylor set for a first time where it's like they maybe are hit by a wall of my energy and it's almost jarring. I think that sometimes I might have some haters that will be like, what the fuck is that? Um, but if you kind of let it hit you and let yourself absorb it, then the goal is to, if he can do that in front of 1,000 people and make himself look like a fool and just feel the energy and not give a fuck and just like dance, then maybe I can too. And once enough people in the crowd really start to understand that philosophy, and all of a sudden, if you're not dancing, then you're the weird one. So uh
Very
yeah,
true.
I mean, and again, I've been playing a lot of fast music, a lot of techno, a lot of hard techno, a lot of stuff that just is just so rampant with energy intrinsically. So that makes it even more fun for me.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting to sort of hear your perspective as you're performing. And like you said, this conducting, this idea of conducting, I think it's a really interesting and probably helpful perspective to look at it from every time you go into a show. And,
Yeah.
another thing I think too that like stands out here is this idea of doing the show fully sober. I talk with a lot of artists, DJs who are maybe sober now, but they weren't in the earlier on in their career. And I find when they talk about that, it to be a really interesting shift from, using substances to thinking they even had to at times, right? To then experiencing it fully sober and really enjoying it so much more, feeling like they got more out of it, feeling that the crowd enjoyed it more. And, I think because you're truly connected and present.
Absolutely. Yeah, alcohol specifically is not conducive to a good DJ set for me, at least. I get sloppier. Like, I take pride in my transitions and my technical moments and my just good DJing. And I find that I get a little sloppier when I drank. Also, for me, alcohol, it doesn't give me like a boost in energy, or like I don't really, maybe in social interactions, maybe it helps me lose my inhibitions a little bit, but it does not on stage. Avicii talked about this in the most recent documentary, where they talked about it, how Avicii would drink a lot,
Mhm.
originally when he was touring, and how he, I think maybe felt like he could only really like become the Avicii that people wanted to see on stage when he was drinking, and that the highs of being on stage and being at these festivals was like very much attached to having alcohol in his system. It's just what he was used to. And he really struggled with like letting those things detach. And I had always heard that. I think it might have been, from Avicii's story, but I was very like, when I first started this, I was very cognizant of not wanting to attach the highs of the performance and the connection of being on stage and dancing with others with drugs and alcohol. Because once those get connected, it's very dangerous. With the intense high that I feel after an incredible show where I've connected with hundreds of people that have wanted to maybe take pictures with me, or, whatever, like, will that high be magnified times 10 if I'm fucking rolling? Probably. But how dangerous does that sound for somebody that like does that for their career? Like, I'm going on tour. Imagine if I was doing that at every show in different cities across the world. It's just very, very dangerous. So it is something that I have really, from the beginning, been militant about, because of all the horror stories, and also because, like, in doing this, one of my big motivations is to motivate and inspire others. To do that, you have to be a good role model. You have to practice what you preach. So I would never want, another DJ to look at me and get the wrong impression, or negative lessons, or be inspired in the wrong way. So those are just some of the things that like have gone through my mind about this topic.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot here, right? I think like you said there could be that piece where it gets associated with the high and or it just gets associated with playing a set, right? Like you're doing it so you're drinking, right? It's also a culture that promotes alcohol, right? And promotes drinking and or drugs at times. And I think too, like with for Avicii, from watching the documentary, it sounded like performance anxiety was like something that was a thing, right? And then, like you said, when you're drinking alcohol, it's reducing your inhibitions. So that makes it easier to do, especially when you're doing hundreds of shows a year and then add up that amount of alcohol over a period of years. I mean, that is like, it is a very slippery slope if you're DJ or artist who's nervous about performing and then suddenly you're trying to drink to manage it, right? Like that can really get out, it can go downhill really quickly.
Absolutely. And like the real lesson here is that you should use no crutches if possible to access your performance as an artist. I'm very lucky. Like I have had before becoming an artist, I had a lot of experience being, a public figure. Like I was an elected official. I gave speeches in front of thousands of people. Like I kind of knew that I could do it in like the performance live aspect. So I already I like acknowledge that that's like a little bit easier for me to say.
Mhm.
But if you are like a producer maybe you know that is also DJing, but you're much more comfortable alone in the studio making music, but acknowledge that you want to play out your music live and build a fan base and all that stuff, but are maybe like really nervous about that and have used alcohol as a crutch to help you, break out and perform and lose your inhibitions. You need to acknowledge that for you to connect with your crowd and build your relationships with your fans, you need to do that in a way that is as genuine and raw as possible. And alcohol, while it might make it easier for you, right? Is it as genuine? Is it as real? Is it as present and authentic? And in this age of AI and in this age of us just wanting things that are real online and in our lives, like striving for authenticity in the artists we look up to is going to be more important than ever. So, yeah, that's kind of just a little bit of food for thought on that topic, I think.
Definitely. And I think that's really well said. And then I think also too, a piece of that is like you said, if artists are feeling like alcohol makes it easier, I think I always take that a step further. And is it really easier? Right? Like it may be temporarily calming down, nerves before the show and or anxiety, whatever thoughts or physical experience you're having. But is it easier in the long run? Is it easier that next day when you have to fly out somewhere else and do it again? I mean, it can be a very temporary solution that has like so many other things attached to it. And it really makes things so much harder.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for me, it does not make it easier. It makes it harder.
But, we've talked about this before. I think, Avicii and my love for Avicii and, seeing what he experienced, like that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. Right? Because I feel like so many artists, you had this experience of having a completely different career and being prepared for performance, right? Because a politician is really doing lots of public speaking, outreach, all sorts of things. But I think so many artists are not, they don't learn these skills that they need to be successful on the front end before they're already in it, right? A lot of times they're just thrown into it and they don't have whether it's the performance skills, whether it's the business skills, and it is a lot to learn. I think it's a lot to learn even if you're coming out of a different career, but it is a lot to navigate, I think. And I see artists really struggle with, some different pieces of this or sometimes all of them because no one is trained for this, right? Like you're not trained on the performance side. You're not trained on the business side. You're not trained as a leader. You're not trained as a CEO. You're not trained to manage a team. It's like no one is, right? But like, how do you figure it out? How do you learn it? Like, I think that could be like a whole episode if we, go down this rabbit hole here.
Totally. There is so much for artists to do, especially in 2026. Like you kind of have to do everything. And like I have an incredible management team that I owe everything to. But even, the reality of the situation that it is still all down to the artist. Like the artist still kind of needs to do everything. The management, your manager, if you're lucky enough to find a fantastic manager, they can still only pour gasoline on a fire that you must kindle. Like it's still all up to you. So that's very daunting. And you kind of just have to be okay with making some mistakes along the way. That's really the only way to do it.
That's a really good point because I think no matter what, there is a lot of learning by doing and making mistakes here.
Yes. Learning by doing it is one of the biggest lessons that I think we can impart because like with releasing music, for example, you know, God, if I look back on like my first official releases, there's no world where I would release those tracks now, for a variety of reasons. But I would not have gotten to where I am if I just didn't release them, Like if I didn't learn by doing, I wouldn't be here. And if I didn't keep doing and keep learning, I wouldn't be where I hopefully will be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So doing is really like the concept, and hopefully you'll just learn along the way.
Yes. And I was like laughing as you're saying this because I literally just had this conversation with someone, about, like you said, in the beginning, the stuff you release early on, like it takes years. It takes so long to be, where you are from the beginning. Like, everyone, a lot of DJs say, like, you make really, you know, it takes a long time to make good music. That's all I'm that's all I'm saying, and you keep growing, you keep learning. Um, and those are the ones that are still here, right? If you don't give up, you keep going, you keep doing it. And, that's the only way to get there. You've got to learn from, you've got to learn from wins, you've got to learn from losses. There's so much of this learning process as you go, whether it's releasing music, whether it's playing shows, whether it's the business side, whether it's leading a team. It's like endless learning here.
Totally. Yeah, there really is.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, about to learn more about the whole team piece, right? Because I think that is a jump that artists sometimes have a challenge in figuring out. How do you make that leap from it just being all you to having a team?
It's a great question, and it's hard for a variety of reasons. The first reason it's hard is that when it's all you and all your thing, you're the decision maker. Everything lives or dies with you and what you do. And, something that I'm still learning, how do you trust someone to take care of something that is everything to you? Like I can't think of a better team that I could have in the world. But still, it's like, do they care as much as I do about this? I mean, I no, right? Because I, I fucking care. Who's gonna care more than me? So like that is one thing to think about in terms of how to make it happen. Like I think the way that my team and I connected is a little bit like romantic, cute. Like I don't know, like it's just like, oh, that's so cute. So basically, I had a friend, Janae, who booked me for like her backyard party a little bit over a year ago. No, 2 years ago, actually. Jeez. And, it was like a backyard party in Bushwick. I think everyone thought that I was just going to be like, oh, there's going to be a DJ who's going to like spin some like deep house, keep it vibey in the backyard.
Mhm.
Sunni, I turned that backyard into a fucking rave. Anyone who was there can verify this. That like 35 person backyard like shindig became a freaking techno rave, and like shit just went crazy. And there were two guys there, Eddie and Jamie, who were also friends with Janae, that work high up in the music industry. And they were like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, what the fuck is happening right now? But they clearly saw something in just that moment that I was able to just like galvanize people to dance and create that type of energy out of nothing. Not out of nothing, but you know what I mean. And then I just kind of built a friendship with them over the next number of months. They introduced me to their colleague, who was like more of like an artist manager, actually. His name is Marco. And yeah, I met Marco in person because he lives in Europe, but he was in New York. And I had also been talking to some other potential managers or management teams, that I think are also fabulous people. But I don't know, I just always really liked Eddie and Jamie, and quickly liked Marco. And then we just became fast friends, and it just kind of happened that they started managing me. But I love that it started this way organically, because you know because I know that they believe in me. Like, I know that at the end of the day, they are taking a lot of time and energy out of their lives to invest in me as an artist. Even now, they're not making very much money at this point in my career. I just know that it's just because they fucking believe in it. And that is very motivating, and it also shows me that it's real and genuine, and yeah, that means a lot to me.
Wow. And I think that is really, really key, right? Like you said, in order to feel like your team is going to go all in for you, you have to know that they believe in you, that they are going to prioritize you, that they are like fully on board.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, there are so many horror stories with managers. I mean, you hear about it all the time. Like, I hear about it from friends and from, just people in the industry or something. So it's a very scary thing, honestly, to work with a management team. And I would suggest, regardless of who they are, they could be the biggest manager in the world. You got to do a trial with an agent, with a manager, with whatever. Do a trial period for both. Everyone should agree with that, because then you can find out how they work, if they can even deliver on probably anything of what they've surely promised you as part of your initial conversations. And they can see, oh, does this artist actually work hard? Do they actually have the right philosophy? Do they actually, are the demos that they're working on really good? Like, can they, it's just everyone should be down for a trial period, because yeah, it's always a red flag for me when it's like, it's just sign. I'm like, let's just see if we can work well together.
Right. Well, the trial period, I think, is really interesting because it gives both sides, right? Not even just you as the artist, but them as the manager. It gives both sides the opportunity to get to know each other better, right? If you may not know each other that well, and also to build trust, right? Because that has to be happening on both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah, and trust is so key. Like, I'm very lucky to be able to trust my management. That is not something that every artist can say. And it's critical, because you guys, you're going to be in, fighting fires together, and you have to know that they have your back, and vice versa.
Right, right. So, and I think too, like you mentioned earlier, like that control piece, in order to be able to give up some control to your team, you've got to be able to trust them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh yeah. And you have to be able to know that they are in this fight just as much as you are, because it is such an intense journey to make it as an artist in any space, but certainly in the electronic music space. So you have to know that they've got your back.
Yeah. And, I think you've come from an extremely challenging industry to another challenging industry, right? You're going from politics to the music industry, right? They're different, but I think they are both very high pressure. I think trust comes up in both, right? For sure. The public facing, being a public figure, being, a public servant in a way, you're kind of still doing that.
Yeah, it definitely has been a jarring change in some ways because of what you're describing here. Like, in my kind of professional life, I was very used to a certain standard, both for myself, but also for the people around me that I work with, that I do business with. Like, I worked in presidential campaigns. So like on the presidential campaign trail, there was a very, if there's something to do, you do it right now and you do it perfectly. And then you move on to the next thing. Like that, that is the standard. And if you can't meet that standard, you're out of there. Same thing went for my time on city council. Like, I was responsible for the well-beings of thousands of people in my district. Like, when shit had to get done, you get it done. There was just a very high standard of work that I, like, at a very young age, put myself at. And there are a lot of very, very, very talented people in the music industry that do work at that level, but it is not the standard. It is not the standard at all. So I have had a bit of a struggle in some ways with that, because I like to work quickly, I like to work efficiently, I like to move fast, and that doesn't always happen in music. I've learned that patience is a virtue that I do not currently have yet, but I'm working on it.
All right. So it sounds like that's been a challenge. You're saying you're working on patience. Is there anything that's sort of helping you navigate it? Like anything that helps you deal with, just how different it is in the way that things get done?
Acknowledging it. I'm acknowledging it. I mean, I think I just like fill the time by working on other things, like,
Okay.
if I'm not hearing back from a label, then I'm just gonna not dwell on it and I'm gonna work on some content, or, like, yeah. I think I just, yeah, I think I'm really just like learning patience, because I literally have to. If I don't learn it, I will explode.
So, if I'm going to like throw on my psychologist hat really quick here, and say like it sounds like you're doing a couple of different things here that are helpful, right? It's still not easy, right? It's not easy to be patient and, wait on other people, but one thing you do is sort of like a behavioral thing. You do something else. You focus on doing something else. That's like what is in your control, right? Like that's like I think the behavior side you're doing there. And then also like with the thought side or like what's going on in your mind, like you kind of are coming to this point of acceptance of, things really do operate differently in this industry, and I think for me too, like that's something I've had to adjust to, right? I think I've had to learn, like coming from other sides of business, right? And working in corporate, working in the psychology field, and then working in the music industry. I think for me, it's been challenging too, because I've had to learn, like, okay, you may not like I realize I guess I'm more of a planner than I thought I was. And planning like that the planning here is very different, right?
Mhm.
Like, sometimes within a corporate environment, you're knowing things like years ahead of time.
Totally.
And here you could think something's happening, you don't know it's happening now, it's not happening. I've had to really like focus on being more flexible, right? Like not that I wasn't flexible before, but I think this is just like you have to be extremely flexible. Things are very uncertain a lot of the time, and even when you think they're certain, they may not end up being certain.
Oh yeah, and it can end in heartbreak.
That too, that too. Yeah.
You're so right. Like, I'm just experiencing it now with the tour that I just announced yesterday. Like, really excited about the tour. I genuinely think every show on that tour, every city is going to be a slam dunk, sold out event. I'm so psyched. But I just wish that like some of the other, promoters and shows that we were talking to could have also been on that initial tour flyer, been part of that first announcement, but they're not there. And it's just because, maybe they couldn't figure it out in time with the venue, or they couldn't, whatever. But the point is, there was a time last week when I was like, let's just figure it out, let's just get it on, but now it's like, wow, just be flexible. Just be flexible. If that X City show does end up locking in next week, and fine, they didn't make it on the original tour flyer, but it's cool. You'll still promote it. People are still gonna come. We're all chilling. We're all chill. It's all keep it flexible, keep it chill. As you may be able to tell, I am a Virgo. Flexibility is not in my nature, but I am learning how to do it. I'm gonna get so freaking good at it too. I'm gonna kill flexibility. Patience. They're gonna call me Patient Conrad, not because I'm sick, but because I'm flexible. So we're gonna be good. But
Well,
yeah.
and I think it sounds like that's an ongoing goal for you. I know it is for me. I think that's something that we should always be working on developing, right? And always be learning, how to be flexible and be more open, because I think we can get sucked into wanting things a certain way or wanting things to be routine. And, it just doesn't really, it rarely goes that way. I think it's important to have some routines, but you have to be flexible with other people when you're dealing with other people, with venues, and even like on when you're running a team, like you've got to deal with other people's either personality or what they have going on in their lives. I think like that's such a big piece of whether you're running a label, whether you're an artist and you're just dealing with your own team, like you've got to figure out all of that, and it's a lot. And at the same time, manage your own like emotional responses and flexibility. And I think that's a lot too.
Absolutely. It definitely is. Managing people is a whole nother conversation. And that's like another thing that artists are never, ever taught how to do. Like, um, and we've had this conversation before, Sunny. It's like in the perfect world, I could just worry about making music and doing my shows and like connecting with my fans, you know, like building community, maybe making content, like just like do the artist thing, just be an artist, exist as an artist. It's why you want to do it, right? In a perfect world, that would be the case. But the reality world is that you got to do the business stuff. You have to do the management stuff. You have to do the bullshit. I mean, quite frankly. Um, well, no, a lot of that is not bullshit. That is not true. But you know what I mean. You
Mhm.
have to do the things that aren't as glamorous or immediately rewarding, um, because you're building. You're not just making songs in your bedroom. You're building a business at the end of the day. If you want to be a really successful artist.
I think that is so true. And I'm excited to see that I think more artists are really looking at themselves as the CEO of their business, right? Even if they don't have necessarily a label or a collective or something else they're doing, you are a CEO. And again, nobody's trained you to get there. Like, here you are, and you're doing this thing. And there are so many pieces of it to figure out. And so much of it, like, where we're talking about this flexibility thing, so much of this is about figuring out and learning about yourself and becoming more aware of yourself.
Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true.
It's a lot. It's a lot to take on. And like you said, when you first get into this, you're doing what you love, what you're passionate about. And then I think a lot of times people are surprised or like hit out of nowhere with like, okay, there are all of these other things I need to be doing. And, I would say I've never seen somebody who loves all of the things, right? Because that doesn't happen.
Right. Even in making music, like there are things as producers you may love as you're making a song, and things that you might find more grueling. Like when I'm making, you know, if I'm in the studio making Move, like boom, boom, I love making that synth. You know, I love finding the right kick, but maybe finding the right hi hat or like automating the LFO, or like there's some things that I just I don't want to do it. But a great song requires all of it done. You can have the things that you like and the things that you don't like, but you got to do it all to make a great song. Same goes for having a great business and a great career.
Very true. Very true. And I think it's about sort of balancing, making sure that you focus on doing the parts that you love, fully enjoying those, right? And also learning the other parts, having some understanding of them. And then at some point, with certain things, like with certain business things, you can delegate that stuff out.
Right, right, yes. And then there's the whole money thing, but that's a whole nother, it's a whole nother thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I think the money thing is very big, right? And I see that as like sometimes a barrier or challenge that can prevent artists from even making this full-time leap, right? Is the money.
Absolutely. And that's another advantage that I had coming from a previous career, is that I was able to start at the bottom as an artist because I had, savings from my previous career, but I was also able to do part-time work as I transitioned into being a full-time artist as I am now. But yeah, if you're like just at a high school or college or whatever, just trying to be an artist and don't have like resources, geez, I don't even know how you would do it. Like, there isn't money in this really for years. And even when there is, you have to reinvest like all of it. So, ugh. I mean, I struggle with money now, and like, not no, nobody has to be worried, but like in a way that's like it's very non-glamorous, even as you find success. It's very non-glamorous, unglamorous.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like that is important. Like you said, you sort of made it, even though it's still hard. There's no really easy way necessarily, easy road, but like you sort of made this transition kind of slowly into it. And it's still tough.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, there's so much more I want to get to. I'm like, we don't have that much more time, but like something you said, like in your very first response, like I did want to go back to. You mentioned like with music, for you, it was like a way to express emotions. And, boys, men, it's not very commonly accepted that, unfortunately, that they express emotions. So like I want to talk more about that because I know that's something like you are passionate about and has like come through in your music as well. So like let's jump in there for a few minutes.
Yeah, it is something I'm really passionate about. We live in a society where boys and men are not encouraged to express their feelings and emotions. In fact, we're encouraged to suppress them. Um, I, partially inspired by my own experiences, but also by the experience of others, have tried to make that a center point of my artist project whenever possible. Shout out Johnny Cole, by the way, from Hey Brother Co., who has taught me a lot in this topic and kind of men's work in general. Music for me has always been my way of expressing my feelings and emotions. So how can I use my music to inspire others to do the same? It's something that I've always thought about. That could mean letting go of those societal inhibitions on the dance floor. That could be one way. And another way could be a bit more poignant with, like, I wrote a song called Boys Expressing Their Feelings back in 2024, kind of like a deep melodic house song that literally just talks about this topic back before I was making lots of hard techno. Um, and I want to keep doing that in my music. I want to keep, hopefully, inspiring boys and men to believe that it's okay to feel your feelings, and that it's healthy to do that. It's important.
Yeah, I can, I hear your passion. Obviously, I'm familiar with the song. And, I do think it really just shows how deeply you care about this. And it's also a great way to show sort of what music has done for you to help you, to help others do the same. Like, I really love the message in that song. Like, and I know how much you care about this personally. And I think that just like makes it so much more meaningful.
A society where boys and men can't express their emotions, it's a more dangerous world, for men and women alike.
Mhm.
It's an angrier world. It's a sadder world, and like I really, it's always top of mind for me. Like one moment recently that I can think of is like there was this trend that was going around. Like men used to go to war, um, but now they whatever. Now they stand us up on dates, or like it was like it like started as like a very like funny and also like probably like you know like feminist trend that I at the time I was like, oh, that's funny, and like a way for women to kind of like complain about their like bad experiences with men, which I'm totally support and acknowledge. But it kind of the meme kind of like took a bit of a negative shape uh in in some ways, because um why are we like glorifying the times that men like went to war? Like why do we have to frame it so that like men, it would be better if men just like went to war and were violent and did their thing, fighting each other, and let us and leave us alone. Like upon reflection, I became quite uncomfortable with this like meme that was taking over the internet.
Mhm.
So I just made like the stupidest video in my bed, which is right here, where I was just like, men used to go to war. I don't want to go to war. I want to be a DJ, you know? And like that video has like millions and millions of views. Diplo just posted it on a story. Like Sebastian and Grosso, Subtronics have liked it. Like it's gone crazy. And just this like little tiny little video speaks to this like longing and desire for men, whether they are the most successful DJs in the world or, whoever, like
Mhm.
to be heard and to be like um seen for their like feelings and emotions, and not to like as like, just like protectors or strong men or whatever it is. And it's a very nuanced topic, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of space in music, especially as an artist, that really strives for people to be the most authentic version of themselves. There's a lot of space in music for advocacy around boys and men, and in ways that are healthy and positive for all genders.
Mhm. Well, and you mentioned earlier that like one of your goals is really to be a role model and inspire and motivate others. And I think, you're doing that all around, but especially when it comes to this. So, and it's so cool to see that others get it, they acknowledge it, they see it, and they're on the same page. Like we, need to be doing more of expressing our emotions so they're not coming out in anger or being suppressed. Because I think we'll all be happier and better for it.
Yes, society itself will thank us. There'll probably be less war.
Yes. A big yes to that. So before we wrap up, like I have two questions that I wanted to throw out there. And one is, tell us, like, what's one unfiltered truth about this industry you wish someone told you earlier?
Crazy question. Honestly, that there are so many more people willing to help than hurt, actually. Like, I'm gonna answer this in a positive way. Like, it takes a village to find success as an artist. You're gonna need to ask for help 10,000 times, even if it's just like sharing or reposting a video to, like, you know, much bigger asks than that. But people will help you if you ask. And I think that sometimes people can be scared to do that. I know I certainly was and still am. But the amount of people that have helped me out just because I've asked, I like, I owe everyone in the world 10 times over. That's something that I'd like to share. And then in terms of like, helping others, I think that you can also repay that effectively. And yeah, yeah, that's my answer.
All right. So I'm hearing from that there's a couple of messages in there, but some of them are like, don't be afraid to ask for help. In order to do this and make this happen, you need to ask for help. And then I think too, it's kind of in a way you are dispelling the myth a little bit, like that no one can be trusted, right? Like, I think there are people that you can trust. And I think it's about finding them, it's about building relationships with them, and also about helping them, right? Like, I think the
Yeah.
more we could provide value to others, the better everything is.
You are such a good Conrad Taylor translator. That is exactly what I was saying.
Like I said, that's only like a few of the messages because I think there was a lot in there, right? That we could go further into. But and like I said, I feel like we could be here all day. But I think there were a few messages in that statement. But it does take a village. You can't do it alone. I think if you're going with that idea, it's not going to work. And I think in order to get help, you've got to ask for it, right? And
Right.
you also need to think about who you're asking.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right?
that's for
And
sure.
build those relationships. I think when people go in asking for something to a stranger, I mean, that typically doesn't go well. And again, that's a whole nother topic.
Oh
Um,
yeah. No, I mean, yeah, like I really care about helping people, and like when people reach out to me for help, like I really do my best to help. But the chance of me like helping someone with anything is obviously just going to be higher if it's someone that has like showed up for me in the past at a show or online or whatever. And that is to say, like, if you need something and we've never talked before, like, shoot me a DM and I'll see if I can help. But it's just almost like it's like a time thing. If 95% of my day is filled with shit that I just need to get done, and then I have 5% left of that day to like help someone out with something, I'm gonna pick the person that has like showed up for me in the past. But there could be some days when I have a lot more time to help. So that's kind of like a good way of thinking about helping, I guess, as an artist.
yeah, I like the way that you said that. And my final question is, what part of choosing a full-time career in music as an artist didn't or hasn't felt the way you expected it to?
Sometimes it's lonelier than I expected it to be.
Mhm.
Um, like I've met the most incredible people doing this, and like definitely see myself building community with just the most wonderful people around me. Um, but like sometimes it can be lonely in ways that I didn't initially expect. Like even the most wonderful shows where you meet the most wonderful people, like you're probably ending that night all alone, in your bedroom or in a hotel room, and like on tour or whatever. And it can be hard to go from those highs to those lows. A lot of time you're spending alone in your bedroom or studio just struggling, you know uh I'm spending more time in the studio thinking about how shitty of a fucking producer I am than actually creating things that I'm proud of. Um, and that I'm sure is a common experience for many of us, but the loneliness aspect of that is something that I didn't necessarily think about before doing this. And then, you build a lot of relationships too, but some of them are a bit parasocial. Some of them are uh, just, not that deep, I guess.
Mhm.
So, yeah, loneliness.
Yeah. I think that is huge. That is like a very big piece for so many, for, if not every artist, is this loneliness piece. And, I had an article last year, about a year ago or so, in EDM.com, sort of about the loneliness that DJs struggle with. And I think that sort of ties in with a lot of maybe possibly what Avicii experienced. And interestingly, a couple of weeks ago, I was chatting with Layback Luke about, about this very thing, right? About the loneliness and about how hard it is. And the higher you rise, the harder and lonelier it can become, right? And this is a very similar experience to what I see with CEOs, right? You're at the top, and if it can feel, and often does feel, very lonely, then add on touring, add on studio time where you're alone. I mean, there is so much alone time. And Luke and I were talking about like how important it is to have support, and like especially helpful support from other DJs who also get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of a few people like here in New York that are like my like really really close friends, as like that are DJs that I'm like rising with, like to just be able to bounce things off of them, chat with them, and relate to them and the things that they're going through, and vice versa, is so valuable to me. So to find those people that you can grow with is so critical. Like, yeah, I don't think I could do it without them.
That's great that you have that. I agree. I mean, I think it is so important to, find your supporters. And, it's great to have supporters if they are friends, if they are family, but having other people who completely get it, super important and beneficial in a different way, right? Because they truly understand.
Yeah, and some of your friends will like outside of the industry will not get it. Like I have some like friends from college, for example. They're some of my best friends in the world, but they do not fucking get this at all. They do not. They support me. They're like, yeah, killing it. They don't even begin to like understand what this is really like for me.
Right. And all you're doing and navigating.
Right. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But you got to find the people that do.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you so much. I'm so happy to have you on Psych Drop. And, thank you for, always, and especially during this conversation, just being authentic, being real with us, and, telling us some things that I think we don't talk about enough in this industry. So thank you so much for being here. Loved having you on. And I feel like there's so much more I wanted to get to. We'll have to do this again.
We'll have to do it again. I thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure to chat with you, and uh, just thank you if you've been watching until this moment for giving a fuck about any of this. Seriously.
Yes, we appreciate you for that. Thanks for being here, and until next time.
Bye.
Bye.